Hi, everybody. Welcome. I almost said welcome to the Hallmarkies podcast. Oops.
I mean, well, we're talking about
Yeah.
Hallmark movies, so
Yes. Well, welcome, everybody, to Hidden Gems on Rachel's Reviews. Yes, I meant to say, I almost said Hallmarkies podcast in our welcome because we're actually talking about Hallmark. Ryan has stepped into the abyss. He's braved the world of Hallmark. 5 movies. This is gonna be a little bit different than maybe some of our other episodes, but I thought it would be fun to kind of look at the streaming service of that Hallmark has offered, Hallmark Movies Now, and since that would kind of appeal to my my other podcast that I do, Hallmarkies podcast, and I just thought it would be kind of fun, something different. And Ryan, thank you so much for braving to dive into Hallmark.
well, first of all, it's a pleasure as always to be here with you, Rachel, and it was very interesting because my experience with Hallmark is admittedly pretty limited, but I think you'll be surprised at my feelings on the movies that you gave me.
Yes. Woohoo! Well, very good. And yeah, I was going to ask, have you watched some Hallmark movies, or are you pretty new to the genre?
I'm like 90% new. I remember watching a few of them when I was a lot younger, but for like as far back as I can remember, my biggest exposure to Hallmark was going to my local mall, to the Hallmark Gold Crown store, which is
Mm-hmm.
a fine store. But I'll just be honest. I think I've been a little condescending towards Hallmark movies in the past. You know, I have no excuse other than I just thought they were like girly movies. But
Mm-hmm.
now that I've actually seen a fair bit of them, I'm willing to apologize to all of the Hallmark fans
Woohoo!
in the uh, in the fair community because uh, like I said, I felt like in private I was like, "Ugh, those movies are not meant for me." But I walked away, I walked away from watching all of these like I was surprised at the enjoyment that I found from all of them.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't hate any one of them. I
All
actually
right.
thought they were all good to great. So
All
there,
right.
and I'm and I do want to apologize again to the, I guess, the Hallmarkies community because in my old age I have gained wisdom.
Well, we will accept your apology. I think it's pretty common actually that people don't give and there are a lot of bad Hallmark movies. I'm not gonna lie. There, and we do in our podcast at Hallmark's podcast, we point out a lot of the bad ones. We're not a
Well,
gush podcast.
well,
Uh,
to be fair, there are bad movies in every genre.
that's
Like
right.
one of my favorite genres is action adventure, and I can go off on two hands right now the amount of action adventure movies that I despise. So it's
Yeah,
not just
that's
limited to
right.
Hallmark; it's everywhere.
That's right. And what Hallmark is most known for is romantic comedies and especially Christmas movies. That is their Christmas movies are their bread and butter. They're going to try to do 40 in 2020, which I'm just like, how is this possible? I think they might actually know Santa.
I think I just got a migraine just hearing you say that
Yeah.
number. 40 of them?
40 Christmas movies in 2020. They didn't even have, they ended up with 39 for 2019, so they didn't even make it in 2019. I don't see how they're going to make it in 2020, but we're here to cover it at Hallmarkies podcast. But they do rom-coms throughout the year. And it started a series called Hallmark Hall of Fame, which used to be on CBS before they had Hallmark Channel. And the Hallmark Hall of Fame goes all the way back to radio days. It's I think the longest running series on on still continuing on television as the Hallmark Hall of Fame. And they still do, in normal years, they usually do 2 to 3 Hallmark Hall of Fames a year. And unfortunately, some of the modern ones have sort of, they're not as special as they used to be with Hallmark Hall of Fame, where I feel like they're just kind of juiced up casts and a little bit more money versions of what they do all the time, as opposed to being something like really different, like a Sarah Plain and Tall, or a something like that that feels really different. But yeah, Hallmark has been making television for a long time. And then I'm not sure on the exact day, on the exact year that Hallmark Channel started. I should know that. I should have that history. but
you are a disappointment to the Hallmark community for not knowing that.
But right around 2015, 2016 is when they really started upping their game with the number of the Christmas movies, and when Countdown to Christmas became like a real thing, and they just keep upping and upping and upping the number of movies that they do every year, and it's just become this phenomenon, the Countdown to Christmas especially. Hallmark Movies Now, they have had for a couple of years, and it's a streaming service that you can sign up for, and it's an interesting service because they have quite a bit of content that they actually have curated from even more than just the Hallmark Channel. There's other channels, like they have a bunch of different movies from the Up channel or the Ion channel, and that they purchased, and they also have a whole selection of Hallmark Hall of Fame of their films, so that's fun. And they have a whole bunch of series. It is not a great show for original content. If you're our streaming service for original content, they only have one show that they have ever really done that is original. It's called When Hope Calls, and there's a spinoff from When Calls the Heart, which is
that one I've definitely heard of, because I remember seeing the promos for that.
Yeah, it's very popular. It's Hallmark's most popular show. But I really actually enjoyed When Hope Calls. It's nice because it has 2 lead protagonists, as opposed to When Calls the Heart, which has just the one with Elizabeth. And these are not historically accurate shows. Like, they're not, it's not like Mad Men where you can go with a magnifying glass and hold it up, every micro detail is this is not that kind of thing. But
yes, the advertising on this building here was supposed to be Royal cigarettes that says Camel, the worst show ever, I say.
Yeah, that's right. But it has I think both of them have their charms. I'm not as big a fan of Hallmark television compared to Hallmark movies. I like the movies much better, but then again, I'm in general more of a movie person than a TV person. On this streaming service, you have When Hope Calls, Chesapeake Shores, you have Heartland, which is a very popular series in Canada, 11 seasons of Heartland on the streaming service. Cedar Cove.
4 more seasons and they'll catch up with Supernatural.
Yeah. No, because they're actually on season 13 now. And
scratch that, 2 more.
Yeah, unbelievable. I mean, and we had Amber Marshall, star of Heartland, on our podcast, and it did better than any interview we've ever done. Like, way better.
We get it, Rachel. You know a lot of famous people. No. You don't have to rub it in my face.
No.
I met Jimbo Fisher, the Florida State football coach at a racetrack once, but you've met all of the queens of Hallmark or whatever they're
I
called. So
wish.
don't rub it in my.
No,
I'm
but
busting her.
I
I'm
was
busting
so
her chops, folks.
I was so surprised though, because I didn't expect to be. I mean, I just had no idea what kind of heartland devotees are out there. Huge. So that yeah. But if you're listening, Queens of Hallmark, come on the Hallmarkies podcast. We would love to interview. I mean, I would die if we could interview Lisa Spear and Cameron and CCB. But anyway, so
what was that name again?
Candace Cameron.
No, Lisa something.
Oh, Lacey Chabert.
Oh, Lacey Sphere, Candace Cameron, go interview with this woman. She deserves it. She has always deserved it.
Thank you. And so they have new programming that they get every single month, and they send you an email with the new programming. They also have what they call Jingle in July, and that was their Christmas in July programs. And then you can watch Christmas movies all year long on Hallmark Movies Now. So they have a whole Christmas section. So a lot of fun stuff going on, but we're going to talk, this is going to be a little bit different than our typical episode where I give 5 recommendations and Ryan gives five recommendations. But since he was totally new to this service, I went ahead and just recommended 5 for him, and we're going to talk about each of them. And so let's dive in. The first movie that I recommended for you is called Loving Leah. And I admit it, I kind of stacked the deck and picked 5 that are 5 of the that I knew that were 5 of the strongest. I'm going with our top deck, our best players.
Hitting me with the Rogues Gallery.
Yes.
The 5 horsemen.
Yeah. So Loving Leah is about a Orthodox Jewish woman whose husband dies, and her brother-in-law is a doctor, is not as strict, I guess, practicing. But he comes home, and there's a tradition in the faith that that the brother will marry the widow of the brother, and so they end up getting married, and she's kind of wanting a way out of this sort of life that she's been having. And so they start off kind of antagonistic, though, towards each other, and as any good Hallmark movie would have, they grow to love each other. And so overall, what did you think about Loving Leah?
I really liked it. As a matter of fact, I'll go out on a limb. Out of all the ones you recommended to me, this was probably my favorite.
Yeah.
This one took me by surprise of how much I enjoyed it. One thing I did notice with all of your recommendations was that there was at least one actor or actress that I recognized from somewhere else.
Yeah.
But the thing about Loving Leah was that the only person I recognized was the female rabbi, who was played by Ricki Lake, who I had to do some research, but she was actually Doug Heffernan's sister, Stephanie, from The King of Queens.
Oh,
and
yeah.
I was like, where have I seen her before? And then she was like, oh yeah, she was Doug's sister, and she was a gym coach and a bunch of other stuff. But but Loving Leah was just surprisingly really great. It started off a little weird because there's the main character, you know, and he's a doctor, and he's like taking a break, and then he falls asleep. And then all of a sudden he sees his brother, who's a rabbi, and he's like, I forgive you. And I was like, what movie am I watching here? But then it actually all connects, and it's actually quite nice. Seeing all the Jewish traditions in here, I was just seeing the ceremony in which, seeing Leah take off the
Mm-hmm.
shoe and throw it across the room and then spit on the ground, and the guy had to walk through it. And I'm like, huh, no wonder Tevye never left freaking
Anatevka. Yeah.
no, not Anatevka, but his wife.
Oh,
And
oh, Goldie. Yeah.
no wonder he never left Golda, because he'd have to walk through her spit if he ever did that. But this has a lot of stuff that I liked in there. It's got a good story. It's funny at times, and there's an appearance of the song "Everything" by Michael Bublé, which
Yeah.
I DM'd you and saying Michael Bublé makes everything better. Absolutely everything better. My one kind of moment where I was like, I'm not sure if I like this, is Leah's mom, who her entire mood was disappointment. She was like, Leah, I told you to do this thing and you are not doing it. I'm like,
Yeah.
listen, mom, she's trying her hardest here, and you just keep yelling at her all the time. It's like she's like Leah can't win for losing, pretty much.
Yeah, they're both of the moms are pretty a lot. They're both pretty overbearing. His mom is played by Mercedes Rule. So that was a pretty big get for them to have an Oscar winner playing that role. But they're both very over the top, kind of your catty mother-in-laws that are really, free with their opinion about their kids, and really controlling, kind of the smother type of character.
So yeah, loving Leah, like I said, had a great story, was really funny at times. Out of all the ones you recommended, this was definitely my favorite.
Yeah, I just love that whole dynamic of, kind of, we're forced to, like, sort of it's like a fake relationship, but it's like real. It's like this forced, like, in reality you'd be like, oh, I don't know, but in as far as in a story, I think it's really fun to see people learn to fall in love with each other. I think Lauren Ambrose, it does a really good job in the lead role.
Yeah, I really did enjoy her. She was very sympathetic, because
Mm-hmm.
she was thrust into the Jewish faith, and all of a sudden her husband just dies, and I just like, man, that's got to be rough.
Yeah. Yeah. And they go to the party, and he's wearing the tux, and she's looking so beautiful in her dress, and just that whole, I love that whole scene, and it's when they finally kind of admit that they are in love with each other, and they're not just faking it. And I don't know, it's really, really good. So I'm glad that you liked it. That makes me happy.
One more thing before we move on. Uh, that Adam Kaufman was actually in my favorite scene of the movie, when when Jake, he being Jake, pronouns, is just
Mhm.
about to go through with the ceremony, when he second guesses and he grabs Leah and is like, I need to talk to you, and they go out into the hall, and he was like very gung ho initially about, I want to get this over with, but then just as he's about to do it, he stops, and then he's like, if I go through with this, then I am denying my brother's existence. And I'm just like, wow, I didn't think about it through that context. And so it was like, it was one of those scenes where it's like, I don't have any brothers or sisters. So so
Mhm.
hearing that from him, just like, I felt very
Yeah.
sorry for him, because if he did it, then it would just, in the Jewish faith, be saying, oh, my brother is like next to nothing to me, which is just, if I had a brother, that's something that I would never do or say.
Yeah. 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 So, very good. All right. So next we have, from 2017, a little more contemporary. We have Love Locks, and this is also Hallmark Hall of Fame. This, I would say, is more typical of what you get from Hallmark as far as the plot. It is more expensive because it was all shot in Paris, so that's what makes it a Hallmark Hall of Fame. But it stars Rebecca Romijn and Jerry O'Connell, real life husband and wife, which is really fun. And she was in Paris when she was young, and she fell in love with the man there, and they promised to there's this whole bridge with the love locks on it where you promise that and they promised that they would be together, and then things happened and they moved apart. And so now she's back in Paris because her daughter is there, and she ends up running into him, and they reconnect. And so what did you think about this film?
I did like it, but when I was finished watching it, I was like, okay, this is the Hallmark that I'm used to, and
Mm-hmm.
I didn't mean that to be insulting. I meant that it was like, okay, this is kind of what, when Rachel was describing it to me, this is kind of what I pictured
Yeah.
in my head. I still enjoyed it, but I did enjoy the performances from Jerry O'Connell and Rebecca, and her name is definitely not spelled like Romaine. It's spelled Romijn, and I was totally going to name her like Rebecca Romagen or something dumb like that. So thank you for saying her name out loud so I didn't get her name wrong, because she was really good in the movie and I didn't want to insult her by saying her name wrong. But I was excited for this movie because Jerry O'Connell is in it, and I've become a bit of a big fan of his in the past decade, because he is actually the voice of Superman in a lot of the recent DC animated universe movies, like Justice League Dark, Apocalypse War, and Death of Superman, Reign of the Supermen, Batman Hush, and just a lot of others. And then when I was doing my research, I found that Rebecca Romaine was Lois Lane in all of those movies. So it's just it's a husband and wife affair, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Yeah. So what were some things that you enjoyed about this film?
Well, first of all, I think the movie looked great. You can tell that there was definitely a lot of love put into the cinematography. It made Paris look like a place that you would definitely want to visit. And like I said, I liked the dynamic between Rebecca Romaine and Jerry O'Connell. It does help that they're married. If there was one thing that I was kind of iffy on, was the relationship between Rebecca Romaine's daughter in the movie and the relationship with the busboy JP. I
Okay.
wasn't crazy about it. I mean, if you like it, I totally get it. But I was
Hmm.
just like, I don't know about this one. I'm not.
Yeah. It wasn't the best. I mean, it was serviceable, like it was okay, but yeah, I definitely was way more invested in the main relationship, not the side relationship.
Yeah, I was wholly expecting for there to be like a discussion between Rebecca Romaine and the daughter, where it was like I fell in love once and it didn't work out well for me, and they'd have a whole big fight, and that really didn't happen.
Yeah. Well, she is kind of worried about her daughter like repeating the same kind of thing that she went over to do study abroad in Paris, and then she had this relationship, and then it didn't work out, and so she's a little bit worried about that, but yeah, it's not a huge part of the movie. It's kind of just a tool to get her over there to Paris.
Yeah, and in that I was like, this seems a tad contrived. But other than that, I
Yeah.
did enjoy the rest.
Hmm. It's interesting because soon after this movie was shot and filmed, the Lovelocks were taken off of the bridge because they were weighing it down and making it too heavy. And so the whole conceit of the Lovelocks is no more, which is
Oh
kind of
wow.
sad. I know.
And and one more note before we do move on. This scene kind of made me laugh unintentionally, but at the very end, Jerry O'Connell's character realizes that he's really in love with Rebecca Romaine's character, so he flies back to New York and chains himself to a picnic table in the freezing cold to get Rebecca Romaine's attention.
I mean, you
I
got to
live in
do what you got to do.
I live in Florida. I have seen snow precisely 3 times, and I know that that's the stupidest thing you could ever do. So I guess that's love for you, thinking more
Yeah.
with our heart than your head.
Yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do these days. I mean, he had missed out on her once. He wasn't going to miss out on her again. But yeah, I that's funny.
I
Uh,
was I was thinking to myself, Jerry, you're Superman. You can break out of that anytime you want.
right. What did you think of the arts teacher, the
that
French
was
art mentor guy?
that was the Bruce Davison character, right?
Yeah,
Hugo.
yeah.
I thought he was okay. I he had certain parts of there were certain parts of him that I really did enjoy. When I was doing my research for this podcast, I come to find out that he was actually the evil Senator Kelly in the first X-Men movie, and
Hmm.
I was half expecting him to be like, "Well, Mrs. Romaine, would you care to like walk through a bank vault or the White House or maybe even their house?" Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an X-Men reference.
Yeah, no,
And
all
then
three of these lead actors were all in X-Men.
yeah, and it turns out Rebecca Romaine was Mystique the whole time, and I was half expecting her to be like, people like you are the reason I was afraid to go to school as a child.
Right. I feel like we've seen this, I've been here before. I've experienced this all before. And do you think that they did a pretty good job of using Paris well as a kind of a character in the film?
It made me want to go there, so
Yeah,
I would say yes.
yeah. Because that's not always the case with Hallmark. Sometimes they do these location films, but then it feels like everything is inside. Like they did a Christmas in Rome, and it just felt like, what did they have, 2 days shooting in Rome? Like there was just so little actually outside in Rome. In this, I think they did a much better job with that, of kind of making it a character in the film. And the whole idea of the love locks is very romantic and very fun, and it's just such a perfect city for a Hallmark movie, because I mean, it's the city of lights, the city of romance. And so yeah, I think this one's a good one. And it's interesting because not every real life couple ends up having is the chemistry you think they'd have in a romantic comedy. Sometimes I feel like, because I don't know if it's just because they're pretending to be other characters, or they're like trying too hard to not be themselves, or what it is, but sometimes it actually can feel sort of weird. You think it would be just like effortless chemistry if you have a real life couple, but that's not always the case. But I think it is really nice here. And it's also nice, one thing I appreciate about Hallmark is that you have love stories about older women, that have lived more life than you typically get in the typical romantic comedy, that or young ingenues. It's nice to have somebody in their 40s, 50s, whatever it might be, um, and who've has a grown daughter, and get to have a more mature love story is, I think, nice.
Yeah, and one of the things that I noticed about all these recommendations is that the women in all of them are largely very well developed. They all
Yeah.
have very successful professional lives. They have healthy relationships with their wives or husbands and their
Yeah.
sons or their sons or daughters.
Yeah.
It's I there's a part of me that got so used to seeing like broken families and just, like families that are together, but, are like the family from American Beauty. They're just
Mm-hmm.
there just to be there. They would have nowhere else to
Yeah.
go. So there's a part of me that watching all these is like,
It's very
oh,
appealing.
healthy relationships.
Yeah.
Is it
Yeah.
possible to learn this magic? And then Emperor Palpatine goes, not from Hollywood.
Very good.
So that's something that I did appreciate.
Yeah. Yes. All right. Next we have Darwin Darrow. This is I guess you might call this more of a pilot to their show on movies and mysteries. This one's a little bit different than the other mystery shows because this is more of a legal drama than it is a mystery show, but there is sort of a mystery element. It is written by Faye Sutton, I think is how you say it, who was a writer for Boston Legal. And you can really see, I think, that there in his background in the show. And it's basically about these two attorneys. Claire Darrow is a defense attorney, and Miles is a Miles Strasberg is last name. Miles is a prosecutor, and they end up battling it out in the courtroom, but there's got terrific chemistry. And that's Kimberly Williams Paisley and Tom Cavanaugh. And Claire, her mother, is played by Wendy Malik, and she's just kind of recently come back into her life after them being estranged. She also has a daughter named Lou, who we are big fans of, Lila Fitzgerald on our podcast. She's a really, I think, a lovely young actress. And they have a really strong, I think, overall supporting cast. And I think the banter is what sets this apart. Especially between Claire and Miles, the banter is really fun. And I don't know, what do you think of this?
This was my second favorite out of the
Mm-hmm.
5 that you gave me. I really enjoyed this a lot more than I thought I would. Half of the fun of watching this was kind of a thing that I did with all of these. It was like pick out the actor that you've seen in so many stuff, but you never knew the name of, like Wendy
Mm-hmm.
Malik. I had seen her face and heard her voice in so much stuff throughout my life that I actually reached out to you, Rachel, and was like, okay, who plays Claire's mom in this? And
Mm-hmm.
you were like, Wendy Malik. And I looked her up on IMDb, and everything just started to make sense. Like
Yeah.
she was in Emperor's New Groove. She's been in episodes of a lot of shows, including Modern Family and Billions. She was a regular on BoJack Horseman and The Ranch, and she was in American Dragon Jake Long, which is one of my favorite shows, and a lot of other like
Yeah.
animated stuff. So I had always heard her voice and seen her face, but I never knew her name. But now I
Yeah.
do, and so I can say that I have Darwin Darrow to thank for formally introducing me to Wendy Malik.
Yeah,
And
and she was on Just Shoot Me, which was a pretty popular show, and was on Hot in Cleveland, which was decently. So she's done a very prolific career.
yeah, and also the lead is Kimberly Williams Paisley, who was another one I'm like, I know I've seen her in stuff before. And it turns out that she is the daughter of Steve Martin and Diane Keaton in the 2 Father of the Bride movies, which I absolutely loved.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was sitting there like expecting Steve Martin to walk in there and complain about hot dog buns.
Yeah.
You're like 10 buns and a
Yeah, that's my favorite scene from that movie. Yeah, and they made 4 of these, and I've liked all 4. And you get to see Miles and Claire's relationship grow, and also her relationship with her mother change and grow. And yeah, I think that the writing is just really strong on this one.
And also Tom Cavanaugh is in here, and the entire time I was like, Claire, you can't trust that man. He's Harrison Wells from The Flash.
Right.
And without going too deep into it, you really cannot trust that guy. But that's another conversation for another time.
I know, but I
But
think I don't watch The Flash, but I've been told that he is kind of a villain, and I'm like, I don't know. I think I would trust him because Tom Cavanaugh. He's actually in another one of my favorite Hallmark movies called Trading Christmas, and he's Ed. He's so charming. Tom
yeah,
Cavanaugh. Oh
he's a good actor, and I enjoy a lot of his
yeah, I
work.
think
And
I would trust him though as a villain because he's so friggin' charming.
well, number one, it all has to deal with a multiverse. I'll explain it to you at another time because there's a lot of
Yeah.
nuances and ins and outs. But I've made it a promise to myself that if I ever meet Tom Cavanaugh in person, I want to give him a hug because he was Ranger Smith in the awful Yogi Bear movie.
Oh yeah.
And Yogi Bear is one of my favorite cartoons. So if I ever see Mr. Kavanaugh in person, I want to say, I'm sorry you had to go through that, and just give him a big old bear hug because no one should have to go through what he went through on Yogi Bear.
Yeah. 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 Oh, that was rough. That was definitely rough.
And
Yeah.
it kicked me in the heart because, I'm such a big Hanna-Barbera fan and watching that, I had to like watch it through my hands. And I'm like, look at how they've massacred my boy.
Yeah. What did you think of the case as far as the jewel thief and all of that? Did you think that was well done or?
I think so. I mean, when it comes largely in terms of the story, I don't think it was reinventing the wheel or anything,
Yeah.
but it was serviceable for what it was,
Yeah.
and I was sucked up in the acting more than the actual story, which I
Yeah.
consider to be a compliment.
Right. Agreed. Yeah, I think that's fair. All right. So the next one that you have is that I gave for you is In My Dreams. This is from 2014. And this is a story about this Catherine McPhee, and she makes a wish into a fountain, and they both do, her and Mike Vogel, and they start having dreams where they meet in their dreams, and so they basically, and then they have a certain amount of time. They have like a week in order to make this find each other in real life. They keep meeting in the dreams, and this one has like a little bit of whimsy that you sometimes don't see in Hallmark movies much. That I know there's just a little bit of sort of, it kind of reminds me of like only you, with Robert Downey Jr. and Marissa Tomei. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but I like a sort of more whimsical romance with a little bit of magic. And what did you think of this one?
I again, I enjoyed this one. This was kind of on the bottom end of like my ranking system. I
Hmm.
still enjoyed it,
Yeah.
and I thought it was good, but at the same time, like I really was high on loving Leah and
Hmm.
Darrow, that the other ones were just like I liked them, but they were just kind of there.
Right.
I just was again. I was playing guess the actor, and the guy who plays Nick Smith, Mike Vogel, has been a bit part in several movies that I like. He was the lead in Cloverfield, which is a movie I absolutely love. He was in The Help, and he was unfortunately in Fantasy Island. I want to give him a hug for being in that piece of crap, but that's neither here nor there. The Again, this plot kind of feels like what I would think would be a typical Hallmark movie, but I'm not trying to be insulting. Like it
Hmm.
just, when I think of a Hallmark movie in my head, it's like, okay, a girl throws a coin into a wishing fountain and meets the guy of her dreams, and they have a week to make it official. That
Yeah.
seems about
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, exactly. And but a lot of times it's more like people are sort of thrown into working with each other, or something like more grounded. So I did appreciate that this had this sort of feel of whimsy about it, which I think was nice.
Yeah, and Jo Beth Williams was in there too, and yet another one that I was like I'd seen in so much stuff, but she was the mom in Poltergeist. Man, that's an interesting story.
Mm-hmm.
She was in The Big Chill and Kramer versus Kramer. So one thing I did notice was that Hallmark has a trend of picking up really solid actors who have been in stuff that I've seen, but would never be able to pick out in like a police lineup.
Right. Well, a lot of it is also if they're the Canadian, because almost all of these are shot in Canada, and not as much the Hallmark Hall of Fames as much, but still, if you kind of go back, you dive in, you're like, oh, that actor's from Canada. That's why they're in The Flash and like all these shows and the Hallmark stuff that is filmed in Canada, because they have tax breaks and everything there. But did you think that they had nice chemistry? Because I think that's a big key for these kinds of films, is if the couple has a nice chemistry together, then it could go a long way.
I think they did, and I don't know how you feel about it, but I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, I'm rooting for these two. I hope that they make it work.
Yeah, me too. I think they did. And especially I think it's pretty impressive, especially when you consider that Catherine McPhee now isn't like the most seasoned actress in the world at this point, 2014. And so I think she did a good job. And like you said, the supporting cast, I like Rachel Scarston. She's funny in this. Antonio Cupo playing Mario, I think he's fun. I feel like it builds tension pretty well, and you're like, oh, when did they got a week, they got this ticking clock that's, I think, set up pretty effectively. And how the heck are they ever going to find each other if they just meet in their dreams? So there he's like, it's like romantic inception.
What's the most resilient parasite, Nick?
That's right. So all right, our last one is One Christmas Eve. This was also Hallmark Hall of Fame, and this I kind of enjoy because I think it's a little bit more humorous than your typical Hallmark film. There's some slapstick, some silliness that you don't always get in these movies. And what did you think of it?
It was kind of on the bottom end, but I still did enjoy it. It's
Mm-hmm.
like, I think if I had to arrange it into a list, this would be in the middle. I have
Mm-hmm.
a soft spot for most mainstream Christmas movies, but I haven't seen a ton of Hallmark Christmas
Yeah.
movies, so I'm still kind of like testing the waters on that. But for
Mm-hmm.
this one, I did really enjoy. In terms of like families getting together for Christmas and it kind of just going off the rails, there's only one like that makes it work for me, and that's National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation.
Mm-hmm.
I'm afraid it's either going to be, like a watered down version of that, or it's going to be like Christmas with the Cranks, with people that are so unlikable that you just want to turn the whole thing off.
Yeah.
But thankfully, this is not a Christmas with the Cranks. The people in here are actually very likable, and their problems are very understandable.
Yeah.
Another thing that I liked about all of the movies that I watched for this was that, these people would feel like real people. They're not like these OTT caricatures. I feel like I could walk on a random street in this town and run into them and be like, oh, hey, like, hey, Nell, or hey, Reggie,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. And again, maybe it's just because I've been in an AFI project rabbit hole for the last few months, but that was just something that I found refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that they are, yes, that they are in many ways kind of your silly romances and everything like that. But that doesn't mean that the characters don't have relatable qualities and aren't grounded in some degree of, I mean, because romance is a part of most people's lives. It's a real thing that does happen. Maybe
Oh,
not with as many Christmas festivals and things like that as you get in Hallmark, but hey. And And I love Anne Heche. I've always been a big fan of hers, and I think she does a really good job. She's basically in this movie trying to make the first Christmas after her marriage falls apart. She's trying to make the Christmas the perfect, and everything goes wrong. Everything that could go wrong goes wrong,
And
and yeah,
honestly, I thought she was the best part of the movie
yeah,
because immediately you're just like, "Ah, you poor woman. I wish I could reach through the screen and like help you cook something or
yeah,
help you hang up those Christmas lights because I put up my Christmas tree every year at my house, and it's a pretty big tree. So without patting myself too hard on the back, I think I know what I'm doing around a
yeah.
tree."
Well, and the other nice thing about this movie is that it has more diversity than your typical Hallmark movie, which is nice. That you have this sort of hodgepodge of all different people that end up being involved in their Christmas, and it's nice to have uh, different different races and different things all involved in your Christmas movie. Sometimes the Hallmark movies can be a little all white, and that's something they're working on improving. And but this one I think is a good example of one that has a pretty effortlessly diverse cast, I think.
Yeah, the one that stood out to me the most was Carlos Gomez as Cesar because
Mm-hmm.
I recognized him from stuff like Desperado, which is part of the Mexico trilogy from Robert Rodriguez,
Mm.
and he's been like a bit part in other things. Like he was in the TV show Queen of the South, and he was in The Report, which I believe you recommended on our Amazon Prime episode
Ooh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
as
Yeah.
Jose Gonzalez,
Mm-hmm.
and he was also in Madam Secretary, and I remember him also. Oh, he was one of the doctors in Dolphin Tale 2, which is a movie that I really enjoyed. So yet another one of those actors that I couldn't pick out in a lineup, but if I saw his face, I'm like, I know him from somewhere, and then with a good deal of research, I could just have my mind blown because I know I've seen him before.
Yeah.
And of course, Anne Hesh was Maggie in Donnie Brasco and was the second to Harrison Ford in 6 Days and Seven
Mm-hmm.
Nights. So she's
Yeah.
had a pretty lengthy career, which
Yeah.
is still going.
She also did a show that I loved that only got 2 seasons called Men in Trees, about this woman who ends up in Alaska, because they're thinking Alaska is that there's more men than women in Alaska. And I loved the show Men in Trees, but yeah, so I've been a big fan of hers for a long time. But yeah, so there we go. We hopefully give you a flavor of Hallmark Movies Now, and it is $4.99 a month, and if you do the annual subscription, $5.99 for the monthly regular subscription. So pretty cheap in the world of streaming services, and definitely if you like rom-coms, if you like Christmas movies, I think it's worth it. It's worth and they do a pretty good job of every month. There's new material, new shows, and they're not only Hallmark shows, movies. They'll have Lifetime, some of the Ion, Up, some of the other networks. Their movies will appear. So yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I appreciate you having an open mind and checking these films out. And I think this was fun. It was nice, a nice little break.
Yeah, and just a couple more things before we throw it to the ending. I would like to do an episode like this again down the line
Yeah.
because I'll and I guess this bleeds into my next point. I actually loved doing I loved watching all of these movies, and even if it was something like even if it was one of them that was just like, okay, I could go either way on, I was still like, okay, I still enjoyed this. And
Yeah.
I guess maybe it's because I'm so used to seeing like darker movies.
Hmm.
I walked out of there like, oh wow, these are actually not as bad as I've always heard. These are
Yeah.
actually really good. So I once again do apologize to all of the Hallmarkies listeners out there, and
We got a convert. Woohoo!
And I'd love to do a. I feel like I'm at an AA meeting. Like, hello, my name is Ryan Cam, and I was a Hallmark basher. Like, hello, Ryan. You are in a safe place.
Yes, this is very exciting. We did it, everyone. Well, we will definitely have to. I mean, you don't have to twist my arm to get me to talk about Hallmark movies. So this is really fun. And so let us know what you think of these 5 films. What else you like on Hallmark Movies Now? What you think of the service? And we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments section or on Twitter. And so, Ryan, where can people find you?
They can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterboxd at RyanCam20. And then, of course, there's my YouTube channel, Ryan Cam's Movie Reviews. I've been churning out the Nolan month videos. Today is a Tuesday, so that would be yesterday, which is a Monday. I released my video on The Prestige. It was a pretty short video, but The Prestige is one of those movies that I will not spoil just on principle. It's one of those movies you have to go in blind to see and then just let it just wallop you with its twist. It's that good. But I'm still continuing with the AFI project. I'll be covering High Noon, All About Eve, and a bunch of other movies, Apocalypse Now, and Double Indemnity, and just it's a lot of quality coming your way. I'm actually at 90 subscribers, and it's like I'm 10 away from 100. I am so close. So it's like, so I'm just praying to God every day, like, God, please give me 10 more. Please let me get 10 more.
Yes. Y'all subscribe. You'll really enjoy it. Definitely do so. We'll have all of that information in the description section. And you can find me at Rachel's Reviews, all over social media, iTunes, YouTube, and on Rotten Tomatoes, and at the Hallmarkies podcast, where we have so much fun. We cover all things rom-com, all things holiday over there, and I'm really proud of everything, including we do have weekly, every Monday we have an interview with somebody fun, so check that out. And yeah, thanks so much for doing this, and let us know your thoughts, and we'll talk next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye.